Well, you know, I grew up in Millinocket, and I had an uncle who was a great sportsman. My father wasn't much of a sportsman at all, but my uncle was a great sportsman. In fact, he was the best shot in Millinocket. He could shoot a deer from further away than anybody I ever knew. In fact, he used to dip his bullets in salt so the meat wouldn't spoil before he got to it. But I was always after him to teach me how to hunt. And finally, one day when I was 13 years old, it was late October, I got a phone call, and it was Uncle Bernard, and he said, "You get ready, I'm going to take you up to camp, and we're going to teach you how to hunt." Well, I'm telling you, I was so excited I could hardly contain myself. So I gathered all my stuff together, and I was just pacing right back and forth, just shaking all over. I was excited. Well, finally, he pulled into the driveway in his truck, and I run out, and we headed for camp up Middle Joe Mary Lake. And he regaled me with hunting stories the whole way up there. And, oh, I got so excited. We got to camp, because it was cold. This was an old-time October. I mean, we used to have some real winters before global warming set in. And, oh, it was cold in the camp. When we got there, well, he started the wood fire, got the old stove a-thumping, and pretty soon, well, the camp began to warm up. And oh, we got all nice and cuddly, and then he started getting supper, and as he was getting supper, he was telling me all these wonderful hunting stories. And then we ate supper, and he done the dishes, and after supper, why, we decided we'd have us a game of Scrabble. Oh, geez, we sat there and we played Scrabble far into the night. Finally, we were so tired, we decided to go to bed. Must have been, 7:30. So we went to bed, and early the next morning, why, I woke up to the smell of bacon and eggs cooking. And I'm going to tell you, if you ain't never smelled bacon and eggs cooking in a woods camp, you ain't lived. Well, I got up and we ate breakfast, and then afterwards my uncle said, "Now you sit down there on that couch, I'm going to get something." Well, I didn't know what it was, and he went into the next room, and he come back with this thing all wrapped up in a blanket. He slowly unwrapped it, and he handed it to me. He said, "This is yours." Well, I couldn't believe it. It was an old 44-40 rifle. The barrel was all rusted and pitted, and the front sight was missing. The stock was all cracked and coming apart. It was taped together with the official main tool, duct tape. It was really kind of a poor example of a weapon, but it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life. Well, I was just trembling. I was so excited, and he gave me 2 bullets, and he said, "Now you come with me." And he took me over to the door. He opened the door, and he pointed into the snow, and he said, "You see them rabbit tracks in the snow?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, you get your hat on and get ready." So I took my hat, I got it on, getting ready to go hunting. He said, "Now," he said, "you see them tracks?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You follow them tracks because your lunch is on the other end of them tracks. And if you don't get that rabbit, you don't get no lunch." And he kicked me out the door and slammed it shut and locked it. Well, I took one of them bullets and I put it into that rifle and I slammed it shut. Put the other one in my pocket, and I started following them rabbit tracks. See, I followed them for almost a half hour when I heard a cooing noise up in a tree, and I looked up and couldn't believe my eyes. There, sitting on one branch, was 3 partridge. I thought, geez, I got 1 bullet and there's 3 partridge. What am I going to do? Then I come up with a plan. I took careful aim at the end of that branch, and I squeezed one off. Boom! Say, that bullet flew just as true as could be, hit the end of that branch and started splitting it open. And as that branch split open, the legs of them partridge fell down at that crack, and that bullet exited just before that bullet got to the trunk of that tree. And when it did, that branch slammed shut, trapping the legs of all 3 of them partridge. Well, say, I went over, I took my knife, and I cut that branch off, and I wrung the necks of them 3 partridge. I jacked the shell out of my rifle, put the other one in, snapped a shot, threw that branch over one shoulder, picked up the rifle with my other hand, and I commenced following them rabbit tracks. Well, I followed them for, probably 15, 20 minutes. I was going through this thicket of alders and spruce and hemlock when I heard a thrashing and a crashing. I stopped, and all of a sudden, out of this thicket come this sow bear, foam flying from her mouth. Say, she was so close I couldn't do nothing. I dropped my rifle, I dropped that branch, and I put my hand up like that to protect myself. When I did, her mouth was open, and my hand went into her mouth, down her throat, into her intestines, all the way through and out the other end. And I reached up and I grabbed her by the tail, and I snapped her just hard as I could. But when I did, I snapped her completely inside out. So now she was running just as fast as she had been, but now she was going in the opposite direction. Well, I picked up that rifle and I picked up that branch, and I commenced following them rabbit tracks. I tell you, I was getting pretty pooped out, but I kept going. Pretty soon I noticed a motion off here, and I looked, couldn't believe it. Here's a bobcat, snarling, coming right for me. I thought, well, I got one bullet. When I noticed movement over here, and I looked, and here's 5 coyotes getting ready to surround me. Geez, I got a bobcat over here, 5 coyotes over here, and 1 bullet. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do? I looked back at that bobcat, and she looked at me, and I knew right then and there that she didn't like coyotes no more than I did, and that we was going to team up against them. So we took on them 5 coyotes. Say, within 5 minutes, 3 of them was laying dead in the snow, and the other 2 was off in the bushes licking their wounds. Well, I looked at bobcat, she looked at me, and we was both pretty pooped out, so I let her go. She let me go, and I picked up that branch, and I picked up that rifle, and I commenced following them rabbit tracks. Well, I walked for probably another 20, 25 minutes. I come to this pond. Oh, it was the most beautiful pond I think I've ever seen. And I was standing there kind of admiring it, and suddenly I heard a honking noise. I looked up and couldn't believe my eyes. Here's a whole flock of Canada geese heading from north to south. It must have been 100 of them. I thought, 1 bullet, and look at all them birds. When I heard a quacking sound, I looked over my left shoulder, and here's a whole flock of black ducks going east to west. Must have been 75 of them. I thought, geez, look at all them waterfowl, and all they got's 1 bullet. Then I noticed a movement out ahead, and I looked. Couldn't believe it. 2 foxes, obviously rabid, foaming at the mouth, eyes staring, coming straight for me, side by side. Thinking, what am I going to do? Well, then I noticed there was a V-shaped rock right between me and them 2 foxes. So I pulled up careful, and I aimed at that V, and I squeezed one off. Boom! Say, that bullet flew through, hit that V on that rock, and split in 2 and killed both of them foxes. But you know, the explosion was too much for the old 4440. Blew that barrel apart, and all that shrapnel went flying up and went into that flock of Canada geese and knocked every one of them down. They landed within 50 yards of me. And the old stock of that weapon went swirling into that flock of black ducks and knocked every one of them down. They landed within 20 yards of me. But the force of the explosion was so great that it knocked me over backwards into the pond. And when I stood up, I had an otter in one hand, I had a beaver in the other, and my pants pockets were so full of trout that the pressure popped the button on my fly, and that button flew 50 yards and killed that rabbit that I'd been chasing all morning. And that's how my Uncle Bernard taught me how to hunt.